is to the fuzz. It's threatening texts. They are reported on by Politico.com. The hacks suggest Manafort faced blackmail attempt. Quoting from their report, a purported cyber attack of the daughter of political consultant Paul Manafort suggests that he was the victim of a blackmail attempt while he was serving as Donald Trump's presidential campaign chairman last summer. Paul Manafort confirmed to Politico that the hacked texts are real. He says his daughter did receive them. He says she got those threatening texts and the threats to go to the cops. She got them along with an explanatory note purportedly from a member of parliament in Ukraine. The note threatens that this Ukrainian politician has, quote, bulletproof facts about Paul Manafort taking off-the-books payments from one of his former clients, from the ousted Putin-supporting Ukrainian dictator who Paul Manafort did, in fact, work for in Ukraine for years. Paul Manafort says he never received that off-the-books money from that dictator. He also says even though his daughter did receive these threatening texts that Politico has now published, he says he had nothing to do with any of it. It's all just a smear campaign. And we have no idea if the note or these threatening texts about Paul Manafort, we have no idea if they're actually from this Ukrainian politician. For his part, he denies having anything to do with any of this. But there's also a claim in the middle of the story that is specific to our new president. The person who sent these, what appear to be blackmail threats to Paul Manafort through his daughter, this person also claims to have evidence that Paul Manafort got paid to set up a meeting between Donald Trump and a Ukrainian guy who's close to that pro-Putin dictator who Manafort represented. Manafort allegedly arranged this meeting in 2012, long before Donald Trump was ever running for president. So those are the allegations. Those are the purloined texts. That's the story for what it's worth. Was Paul Manafort being blackmailed while he was Donald Trump's candidate? What do I make of this? I have no idea. There's denials all around. From people who are supposed to be the good guys in this story and people who are supposed to be bad guys in this story, everybody denies it. I don't know what it means. But like I said, sometimes the story itself is less important than what it shakes loose. With regard to that claim that Paul Manafort was paid to arrange a meeting between Donald Trump and this pro-Putin politician in 2012, both Paul Manafort and the White House are pushing back on that allegation to Politico. And this is where it gets good, because their rebuttal to that charge is that Paul Manafort couldn't have been paid to do that. He couldn't have been paid to arrange such a meeting, because why would anybody go to Paul Manafort to get to Donald Trump in 2012? Paul Manafort and Donald Trump had no connection back then. Paul Manafort, in fact, never worked with Donald Trump before he became his campaign chairman in 2016. And I think they see that as a great rebuttal to this story. But in offering that confirmed information to back this allegation that really bothered them, they do raise a whole other, way more interesting question. I don't know, and I don't really care whether or not Paul Manafort was the target of blackmail while he was running a campaign. But you know what's turning out to be really interesting? The question of how Paul Manafort ended up being Donald Trump's campaign manager. Who picked him for that? Hold on, hold that thought. Stay with us.
The truth is, our nation is more divided than ever. The truth is,
States in 2016 trying to help Donald Trump's chances of getting elected president. But it's not just us. In the French presidential election this year, one candidate is literally bankrolled by Russian bank loans. And her opponent says he's been the victim of multiple Russian-sponsored cyber attacks and a torrent of Russian-origin fake news reports. In the Netherlands this year, they have decided they're going to hand count every ballot in next month's elections because they're so worried about Russian meddling. This comes after a group of Russians who no one knew were Russians basically ran a propaganda op on a Dutch referendum last year to get an anti-Europe, pro-Putin outcome that Russia wanted from that election. When Sweden was debating whether or not to enter a military partnership with NATO, Swedes started showing up to town halls full of fears sparked by bogus news stories about rogue NATO stockpiles of nuclear weapons and NATO soldiers raping Swedish women. It was almost certainly a Russian disinformation campaign aimed at swaying the vote and keeping Sweden out of NATO. Russia's good at this. They do it all over the world. They change their tactics from place to place, But the goal is the same, right? Insert pro-Russian candidates or political operatives, exploit divisions, empower disruptive forces, destabilize the democratic institutions and the Western alliances that compete with or that challenge Russia. We can see Russia operate that way in country after country, and we know that Russia interfered in our election too. Now think about Paul Manafort. The sudden appearance of Paul Manafort running the Trump presidential campaign last year. From an American political perspective, Paul Manafort doesn't make all that much sense as a person you would bring on to run your presidential campaign. He's a lobbyist type. He's honestly best known in Washington for repping really controversial dictators like Yanukovych in Ukraine or Ferdinand Marcos in the Philippines. And he hasn't been involved in Republican electoral politics in a really long time. He's been so not involved in Republican electoral politics that Politico actually ran a piece about him in 2014 about the fact that nobody knew who Ukraine's man in Washington was. Nobody knew this mystery man, Ukraine's U.S. fixer. Where was he? Manafort's current location, a mystery. Manafort has all but vanished from the Washington scene. That was 2014, all but vanished. And then 2 years later, there he is running an American presidential campaign. All right, but if you look at it through Russian eyes, you think about it from a Russian perspective, when he disappeared from Washington and nobody in Washington knew where he was, well, the Russians knew where he was. He was in Ukraine, right? Spending years laying the groundwork to put a pro-Putin autocrat in power, who then looted his country for the benefit of Putin's oligarch friends. I mean, from a Russian perspective, Paul Manafort is a high-profile guy. Who could be better than Paul Manafort to run an American presidential campaign? Wasn't there an American guy who ran that campaign for Yanukovych in Ukraine? According to new reporting in the New Yorker magazine, intercepted communications among Russian intelligence figures during the campaign included frequent reference to Paul Manafort. I mean, take the view from Moscow. If you know a guy who needs a presidential campaign manager, how about our friend Paul? Right? From the Russians' point of view, who would be a better choice to run Donald Trump's presidential campaign? From our perspective in the United States, Paul Manafort made no sense. Who's he? From the Russian perspective, he'd be the obvious choice. Or take Carter Page. Right? This name Donald Trump seemed to pull out of a hat when he was getting pressure last spring for not having any declared foreign policy advisors on his team. Carter Page, she said, I can give you some of the names. Carter Page, that's my foreign policy advisor. From an American perspective, that made no sense. Carter Page's American foreign policy resume is non-existent. He was a mid-level oil industry consultant who had spent some time in Moscow. One American executive with experience in Russia told Politico, quote, you'd have to dip really far and wide to find a guy like Carter Page. I mean, wow. But from a Russian perspective, here's how Carter Page is described by a spokesman for the Russian state oil company. Quote, he's an extremely well-informed, authoritative expert on Russia. People really respect him in this industry. He's a very serious guy. He has a good reputation, says Russian oil company, Russian state-run oil company. I mean, Carter Page is well known in Russia. He gives speeches slamming American policy in Russia. He gets featured on Russian TV. He's a big deal from the Russian vantage point. Even consider Rex Tillerson. Did you know that Rex Tillerson and Donald Trump had never met before the campaign? Never met before the election? And all of a sudden, Rex Tillerson, Mr. got the Russian Order of Friendship awarded to him by Vladimir Putin personally. All of a sudden, he's Secretary of State in the United States. How did that happen? He and Trump had literally never met before Trump became president-elect. The White House adamantly denies that Donald Trump had any dealings with Paul Manafort before this campaign. And they're telling us that to try to tamp down one of these scandalous news stories that they don't want anybody following up on. But by confirming that, they raise this question: what was this obscure guy? This guy who had been a frequent subject of conversation among Russian intelligence officials. How did he end up running the Trump campaign? How did he get that gig? Where did he get his references from?